Yeah, thank you. Okay. All right, we'd like to call to order the Riverdale City Council meeting for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. Please let the record show that all city council members are present, as well as members of the city staff and members of the public. We will have our Pledge of Allegiance tonight by Councilor Bart Stevens.
All eyes, please. Move hats. Say that for me. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilor Stevens. We'll have our invocation by Councilor Hanson.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for this opportunity to meet together as the City Council for Riverdale City. We're grateful for our staff that are here and for those residents that are involved. We're grateful for the many blessings that we have from living in this country, and help us tonight that we may have patience with each other and with ourselves, and that we may be kind, and that we may be guided to make those decisions that are in the best interest of the city and of the residents. And please bless our staff wherever they are, that they may be safe and protected and return home safely to their families. And we pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilor Hanson. We now have a time for public comment. This is an opportunity to address the City Council regarding your concerns or ideas. No action will be taken during the public comment. And please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. We do ask that you state your name and your city of residence if you do approach the microphone.
Sorry, I don't live in Riverdale. Okay, I'm going to take notes because I get nervous. Read notes, not take notes. Okay, so I'm here representing the Bonneville Communities That Care. And mostly I'm here just to thank you guys for your support over the years. Riverdale has been a fantastic community partner, and we appreciate it. Hopefully you've seen some of our signs on our social norming campaign that say the exceptional but not the oh no.
Yeah, that's right.
Exceptional but not the
Not the
exception?
exception, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you've seen them throughout your city. So that's kind of a new campaign that we're doing with our youth. And we brought you some shirts for all of your council members to help us spread the message.
Nice.
So I have shirts for each of you. I was supposed to state my name, wasn't I?
Yep.
I'm Laura Lee Gasho, Gacioch.
Oh, wow.
I live in West Haven. And that's it. These are for you guys.
Okay. Thank you, Laura Lee.
Put 'em.
You can put them right over here by Mr. Brooks. Thank you for coming tonight. Tell Leanne we're sorry we didn't get to see her and the youth that we're going to come to, but we do appreciate Laura Lee being here. She's on the community board and does a great job on there. Are you the chair of the community board? She's the chair, and she is at everything we do. She is. That's kind of the board that makes the whole thing go. So anyway, thank you for all you do, Laura Lee. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
All right. Seeing no other public comment, we'll move on to presentations and reports. The mayor's report, I went over a couple of things in the work session. I do have just one last thing to mention. We did have a leak on Parker Drive last week, and I just happened to be out for a morning stroll and walked up, and there was flashing lights everywhere, and I thought, man, I didn't know we were doing a project on Parker this morning, and they had everything blocked off, and our guys already had a big hole going, and the thing that kind of caught my attention, though, is they had a pump that had, I don't know if it sucked up too much dirt or what, but it was dead, okay? Pump was dead, and the hole was filling with water again. And they had a big, nice trailer there and stuff to work with, but luckily they had a backup pump. And that's kind of going to be the gist of the newsletter, is that, when they came to us last year and said, hey, we're running short on money, water is a core service, and so,
Yeah.
What's that?
Who's they?
Public Works, the water department basically said, hey, we got to do something about water, so we did a 40% increase last year. Mm-hmm. And then we instituted drought rates because we knew people weren't going to be using any water. And we take a beating on social media occasionally because they say we doubled the water rates, which isn't exactly true because the drought rate is now gone. But anyway, we just appreciate Public Works and what they do, and that kind of will lead into the newsletter we'll talk about. If the trash fees go up, then we have no choice but to kind of raise those. And same thing with sewer, because those are core services. So, but they did get it fixed pretty quickly. I didn't hear a word. I hurried and texted most of the residents along Parker that I knew and just said, hey, it was really early in the morning, and I just said, your water's going to be off for a little bit because there's a leak. Tell your neighbors, you know. And did you hear much feedback on it? Not a word. Yeah, it was fast.
No, we didn't really have any comments back. I think for the most part we was back on before most people was trying to get ready,
Yeah.
and so that always helps.
They said either it broke or they got there about 2 a.m. is what they told me. So anyway, great crew
So
we have there.
The water, the reason why that's running is we can't shut the water off. So for sanitary reasons, we leave flow coming out of the pipe, even though the pipe's broke,
Sure.
so that we don't draw bacteria back in. So people sometimes think, well, why are you leaving the water running? But we do that on purpose to make sure we always have a constant flow out. So
Very
if you
good.
get that question, that's
Yeah. Okay. It's good to know. That's all I have for the mayor's report. Move on to city administration report. Mr. Brooks.
Mayor, I appreciate that. I might just piggyback on that. In addition to all this stuff that's going on, I think this is, since I've worked here, this has probably been the craziest year for public works that I've ever seen. I mean, think about all the snowstorms we've had this year. It's just been one thing after another. And then last Friday, actually it was last Thursday, we had a slide out on South Weaver Drive, if you hadn't heard about that took out at least one lane. And initially we don't know, when these things happen, we don't know where the water's coming from. So Sean and his guys are out there immediately, and they're walking the hillside and whatnot, and that's where he got hurt. And we hate to see that happen to anybody, but these guys are amazing, to put it mildly, and it's been one crazy year. And my hats are off to them for what they've done, and they always do it so well, never complain. They just go get it done. So, Sean, let your guys know we appreciate that. I know the council does as well. So, and we want you to get better. My question to him today was, should you be working? And I knew what his answer was going to be, and he's not going to change that. So, we just run with it. So, all right. As far as department, Cody did include a couple of financial reports in here. One of them I wanted to just point out to you here quickly. Right after the minutes, it's the second report there. It's a monthly financial report, and it's talking about the RDA. I would normally bring that up in an RDA meeting, but it's in this packet, so I thought I would touch upon it here. And if you look at that, it's page 11 on my iPad. You'll see that we're sitting at about $4,300,000 in all of our RDA accounts. Some of those are in the red that are going to be paid back. The bulk of that is in the senior facility fund. And the reason I bring that out is because we've been telling you that, this is getting worse and worse and worse. But if you look in the far right-hand column, so far this year we're running about $40,000 in the red on the senior facility. There's a lot of factors that play into that, but this is what's going to continue to happen. One, we've had the vacancy, so we've lost some revenue coming in there, and then all those remodels when they do move out, because most of these people have been in there for so long, we don't have a choice but remodeling them, and we've really pinched that. I mean, we haven't splurged or anything. It's just bare minimum what they need kind of stuff, but we're still 40,000 in the red on that one. And we just found out that air conditioner is not going to be in like we had hoped, that air conditioner that's going to cool that big gymnasium. So they're scrambling, looking at other things and what other options they have until that gets here. So a lot of issues going on over there. It's and I'm just afraid this is just the kind of stuff that's going to keep happening. So that's where we're a little bit nervous about it. So, oh yeah. Mike,
Councilor Arnold has a question for you.
yeah, go ahead,
So
Al.
one of the things, I'm under the impression that we made a decision to move on that. And are we moving on that?
We will. Yeah, we're already talking about that. In fact, I talked to Cody about. My plan was long-term wise was to move some funds into that, but we think we got enough now that we'll just use funds that are already in there this year. A couple of things I got to look at. One, we got to get it appraised. We got to kind of know where we're at. I also, and unless you don't want me to, I was going to bring in somebody who could tell us how, if that would even be feasible, if we increase the rent and stuff like that. Maybe you don't care. I mean, if you were that determined to just do it. I was just trying to cover all of our bases with all the things we got to do, but that's going to cost us some money by the time I get an appraisal done and another person to come in and look at that, just so you have all the information before you made any final decisions. But yeah, we're still heading down that path, and that's the direction we're going until you tell us differently.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Sorry. Sometimes I think we get a bit of a myopic view from the staff because we understand it's a difficult situation, and it ended up being managed by people who that's not what they were hired to do, and it's difficult. I think my frustration from what Alan said is that we've already all agreed to go ahead and raise the rates multiple times, but the staff hasn't come back with anything yet. And so it's a little hard to have doomsday reports like we haven't discussed it several times already. That's kind of a frustration for me. The other side note is we have a fund for it. We have that $1.7 million, and the purpose of that was for those large-scale repairs. So to say that we're $40,000 in the red isn't the complete truth of the financial situation. It just isn't.
Not the overall thing. I'm just talking about this year for that
Right.
amount.
And I'm
I
just
understand
saying
that.
when
That's why I
it's
said
presented
that.
that way, it just, people who don't have a greater understanding of the full financial picture might think that that's all that we're.
No, that's fair.
Just to be open about the whole thing. Yeah, and so I think that's where I'm at too. That it'd be nice to see some motion on it. It'd be nice to be reminded that there are other options, like you said, to look into, and to keep in mind greater needs of the city versus quick cash to offload it so that we don't have to deal with it anymore. But
And that's why I'm trying to be careful with this, is I just don't want to make a rash decision. I want to make sure we do it right, and that you guys have all the information that you need to make that final decision on that. But as far as the rents and all that, we've met, everything's moving forward, just like we had told you. Just some of these other things a little bit harder to line up, and but we're going there.
Okay.
Anything else on
Other
that?
questions? Okay.
I just wanted to bring that to your attention, just so you see we're not making this stuff up either. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we have a lot of that money. Most of those other ones, in fact, that other one that's pretty large in there, I think is the one where one of those increments is coming out, isn't it? So that'll drop drastically since that was put together. One other thing I would say, Mike just handed me a note here. We do have that general plan open house Thursday night at 6 o'clock, 6 to 8.
What, tomorrow night, Wednesday?
Oh, that's right. It's Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Is it Wednesday night?
Yeah, Wednesday.
I had
night.
it
We had to
Thursday
move
in my
We had
calendar.
to move to Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you can get there, that would be a good chance for you to maybe get some public input from people who are visiting there. We don't know how many are going to show up, but it'd be a good chance for you guys to be here to,
Is that at the senior center, or where's that going to be at?
Center.
yeah,
Community
at
center.
Rich's building there,
6 to 8.
6 to 8. Moving on to our staff report here. We have, there were some additional things in there too that Cody had put in there. The one that I wanted to talk about was just, if you look at, let me talk about the sales report, because I point this one out to you every month because it's got those bars and stuff in it. We had good news and bad news. The bad news is it's down again this month, but the good news is it's not down as much as it was the previous 2 months. And so I think that's a little bit encouraging that it's not just tanking. We're still having good sales. We're still up, and we're above 2021, which I think the 2 previous months before that we weren't. And so that part's positive, I think, in that aspect. The other one was on page 16, and this is it's just the current financial for this year. It shows all departments. We're sitting at about 83% of the fiscal year, and if you look at each department, not one of them are above that yet. So we're all below budget, which is good. Some more so than others. All of them are pretty much in the 80s to high 70s kind of stuff. So we're close, but that's where we should be. That's how that's worked out. So nobody's going over, which I worried a little bit about that because of fuel costs, and that still could change. And even with the extra stuff that Sean had to do this winter and stuff, I was a little bit concerned about it. But so far, we're looking okay. April anniversaries, none of these are the anniversary years. However, we have an employee who hit 32 years this year. Anybody guess who that is? This makes me really nervous because his predecessor, when he was sitting at about 32 years, just walked in and put his keys on the city administrator's office one day and walked home. So I don't want him getting any crazy ideas, but Mr. Douglas has hit 32 years with us, so congratulations to him. That's anytime somebody goes that long, that's impressive, no matter where they're at. And we really appreciate Sean. He's been wonderful, and he runs that department like none of the other ones that we have as far as just being such a tight ship. He does a really good job. So Abe is also in his department. He's sitting at 17. Travis Gibson, these are all your guys, Sean. He's sitting at 12. And then we've got Luigi at 7, a couple firefighters, Prater and Beach at 6. And then Laurie Greenhog, you guys have probably met her up there, our finance gal that writes all the checks and stuff like that. I can't believe she's been here 4 years. That's crazy. It seemed like yesterday when she started. So, all the department heads' reports are in your packet. Do you have any questions on any of those? Most of them aren't here tonight, but maybe I could answer it if you had some on them. Pretty standard stuff. I didn't see anything that really jumped out at us. The community development report, we didn't have that in the same place we usually have it. Just a couple of, I don't know if they're major updates. It seems like Michelle told me I'm a broken record today because I keep talking about the same ones. But Cheddar's has taken some steps forward. They also had a pretty serious medical issue with their supervisor over there, and they had to bring somebody in to replace him. So that's set them back a little bit. I do know that they passed their hood inspection, which was kind of a big one that we were a little bit worried about. This hood is huge, and I know there were some concerns there, but they've taken care of that part, but there's still other things that are popping up. But I still think that we're getting close, probably within a couple months, you think, Mike?
Mid-July is what they're advertising.
Yeah, so it's getting there, and it's going to be a beautiful building, what we can tell of it. So Fizz, again, they're continuing to move forward, slow, but they're getting there. They should be open soon. On a good note, Tesla will be in for a final approval in 2 weeks to Planning Commission. Next week, yeah.
From today.
Yeah. So you'll be seeing that one come through pretty soon. So that's sailing forward. So we like that. And then the apartments over here in the old mobile home park, that's also moving forward, and they'll be coming into next week, right? So both of those will be moving forward. There's,
Arnold has a question.
Yeah.
What's the cleanup? Do we got anything on cleanup?
I can give you a little bit of an update about that. I talked to Mr. Hatch last week.
Nice looking from the front.
Oh, I know. It's a war zone over there.
It's a horse.
He had, the day I spoke to him, it's been a couple weeks now, but the day I spoke to him, there were 8 people still remaining in there. The rest of them had left. He had dates on every one of those, and the last one would be out, I think it was the 23rd or the 24th, that they had told him they would be gone. Now, if that doesn't happen, he'll be forced to go back into court and get a judge's order, but that usually at this point won't take too long. They'll move on that pretty quick. And then at that point, he's just going to start hauling stuff out. We have this is kind of interesting. I had a gal contact me that I've known from years ago who may be buying some of those and moving them to Wyoming. We'll find out more about that this week. So that would be a win-win for everybody because she gets them and can put them in a place that she could use them, and he gets them out of his hair and doesn't have to worry about hauling them off or demolishing them or anything like that. So we'll see if it works out.
Can we put a call into them and see if we can get some moved that are, like there's the closest one to Riverdale Road. All the metal stripped off, the doors
Right.
out. It's
I think the problem, and I don't know, Alan, because I don't know how many of them he owns. The problem would run into the one that somebody else owns. It's still considered personal property, and then he would be liable for it if he touched it. And I'm guessing those are probably privately owned, would be my guess. I think the ones that are boarded up are the ones that Chris owns, the developer. And that's not one of them. So I'm guessing that's still privately owned. So I think he'd probably be really hesitant on that. And I know it's an eyesore, but...
Counselor Stevens.
Basically, unless he has full ownership of it, you're right, exactly. And what's happened is even though the owners are 4-footing them, and some of them are in terrible condition, some of them are actually really nice, and they're kind of getting taken advantage of, and some of them. But what they are doing is they're stripping them of things that they can sell, like the aluminum, the outside aluminum, and it's the fixtures and and that's why it looks so horrible, is because they can sell that.
So we should tell them it's a green initiative. It's kind of a recycling project.
Yeah, it is. It is. And because if they come in with one of those machines, it'll just grab it, kind of flip the front, flip the back, scoop, crush it, and it's out of there. I mean, once they make sure nothing's hooked up, it's out of there within a couple hours. It is such a fast, efficient process.
Yeah. He's ready to go, but he's got to wait.
2 weeks.
They have to do the end of the month. So.
2 weeks.
After the 31st, there's still a couple that are have been sold but not moved, and they've because the problem is the moving company is backed up, and so and I think he's granted some, but there's a lot to do in that place, and so if he goes a week or two waiting for the moving companies, but it's still, and that's why it's such an eyesore, because he doesn't own some of those.
Right. But if that arrangement works out, I think she's coming down on Thursday, so we could know more then. If that worked out for her, it might be a good deal for everybody. And that could get a bunch of those out pretty fast. So we'll see. We don't know. But I know he's staying on top of it. And obviously, they're not waiting if this is coming to Planning Commission already. So, And last but not least, this wasn't in your packet. But it is a report in essence. I just got this afternoon. That's why you didn't have it. Our insurance is all going up pretty much everywhere. I think, like our workers' compensation alone is going up 20%, and pretty much everything we do, auto, property, liability, they're all going up. That's not so much the workers' compensation. Somewhat plays off what happens with us, but the other things, they're getting hit with increases, so it's naturally going to hit us. So that grand total for 2023 is $168,261. So it's not just chump change, but that's our insurance that we have to carry. And then when people keep getting hurt and on the job, that workers' comp just keeps going up. So, and it's a little bit weird. I actually had him come in and speak with our department heads here a couple weeks ago, just so they fully understand it. But they base that over any 3-year period of time. And so if we stay clean for 2 years, then the 2 oldest years drop off. And we've had a couple of bad ones, and so our workers' compensation is quite high right now anyway. With some of our injuries, like the fire guys, I know we had different things that have happened, last couple of years. And so our workers' comp is the highest it's ever been because of injuries we've had. It's just the nature of the beast. I mean, our guys get hurt, in their jobs, and there's nothing we can really do about it, but it does affect us, and we have to pay for that. So just so you know, that will be one of the things we will have to make sure we get covered and
Putting
paid
the
for.
office guys out in the field or something? Or what's that?
We may get to that point, so. I just got it today, Sean,
I
trust
don't want
me.
him to drop his keys on the counter. Let's just hold off for just
Yeah.
a second.
Yeah,
We're glad you were helping, Sean.
we are. And, none of those have been, they're work-related. That just happens.
I didn't say it's
Just
kid.
cost of doing business. And that's all I had on the administration report, Mayor.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Brooks. We'll move on to the flood update report. Mr. Douglas.
So we have been pretty much floating between 15.8 and 16.3 at Gateway. The predictions for the next 7 days are almost exactly there. The thing to keep an eye on is they've started having to put water in Echo. And so it's came up quite a bit. East Canyon's came up even more. And them are our 2 first safeguards. Causy's on the rise as well, which also drains into the Weber.
Lost Creek. Maybe you said
Lost
Causey.
Creek, not Causey. I was going to go to Causey. You've seen what happened with Causey. Once they lost control of it, now the South Fork's flooding and taking out them cabins and that up there. So for the next week, they're still saying they're going to try and keep us at that flat line. And then they'll just see what the reservoirs do.
Is Echo still reduced because of the drowning, or have they gone back up?
Echo is going up.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't really seen a real big reduction in flow on the river. The other thing, we talked about this before, but we did put that SCADA system on the control box in River Glen. It's been working really well. And it's been nice to monitor at our own level instead of at Gateway, which is so far away. And it's been interesting, even though Gateway's been above that 16, we've not been pumping. And so I think the stuff that we did early this spring has helped us a bunch down there. Not saying it won't, next week could be a whole different ball game. We only have, I think, one day in the 70s in the next 6 or 7. So we're kind of on edge, I guess. But we walked it again this morning. Everything that we have down there is still in really good shape. The trail naturally has been flooded pretty much all week. And we'll just keep an eye on it. But I don't know if anybody has specific questions. We are still dealing with a lot of people that are going down there that shouldn't be down there. They've been cutting the chains off the gates and cutting the locks off, and they even went so far as in Cottonwood as they cut the chain on the back, put a snap on it, left the lock in place, so when we drove by it looked like the gate's locked, but when they walk down there they can open the gate from the back and go in. So I don't know what the draw is down there. I know the chief's super concerned because this last deal's kind of really bothered them with the incident upstream. And people just aren't paying attention. You go down there and they're right on the banks. We're just trying to keep them out of an area the trail is flooded there. It's just not good to be there. So I think that's about all I have unless anybody has questions.
I got a couple things there. The CEO was on, Beaver Basin was on, I think, Channel 13 last night, and he said these next 2 weeks are going to be the worst ones we've seen. So just plan on it. They're expecting it, and that is a concern. And I walked the trail with Chief Shelley a couple of weeks ago, and it's scary because with those higher waters, it's cut those banks away. And there's one part, it's right by the part that Sean's talking about that hasn't caved in yet or been flooded, but the bikers have made their own path that goes down along that bank. And if you follow that thing and you look down in the ground, you can actually see the cracks. I mean, this is going to go. And when one of these bikers is going to be on there, he's going in the river. And so when we mark this and ask them not to go in there, there's reasons for that. It's not like we're just doing this for fun. I mean, all that part that's taped off is seriously dangerous. I mean, it makes you nervous when you go and look at it. And it would just take a second, and they're going to be in that river. But they expected that body to rise either last week or this week. It's quite the science that they have behind this. It's amazing, some of the experts they brought in and stuff like that. So the helicopter, I don't know who brought that in, but they were in here today flying that river, I mean, really, really low, seeing it. And they're coming down lower now because they haven't seen anything. They're still focusing on that one area, and they have their reasons for that. But they just are doing everything we can. And even for Riverdale, I mean, I know we're not a main part of that, but between Sean's guys and Scott's guys and Jared's guys, that river gets walked multiple times a day from our people when we can get it in. So we're just trying to help out any way we can. I mean, I know the family's frustrated, and, that'd be a tough loss. And we really don't want them down there, but we're not going to say anything to them either because they have that feeling that they need to be doing something. So we just want to, I don't know, it's going to be tragic no matter what comes of this thing. It already has been, but it's just, I don't know. I just don't want it to get worse. And it makes me nervous when they keep organizing these walkathons and stuff because we just don't want them close to that river and have somebody else go in. But scary stuff. It's unfortunate.
I know we're hoping as a staff that if she is in Riverdale that we find her and that they don't. I mean, I think that's why we've been trying so hard to. We've seen them come out of there before and it's not good, so hopefully somebody else finds her.
I did see a post 1 or 2 days ago that they said the sign was still up that said trail closed, but the gate was open. I mean, I'm sure it was cut. I didn't even respond to it, but how often are we just check it every day, or?
Well, that's the one I was telling you about that
Yeah.
we thought was locked because the lock was on the front.
Sure.
And they'd actually put a snap on the back, so unless you came from the opposite way or pulled on, even pulling on the gate, it seemed locked, right? So as I pulled the chain around this morning, thinking this just doesn't look just right, a snap comes around with it, unsnap, snap, the gate opens.
Okay.
The other gate on the bridge at Sanders, they actually cut the chain and took the chain and the lock.
I go home that way every night, and I go down by Sean's marking system and check that. We usually take pictures of that, and then I cut out down by you guys, and almost every other night it seems like they move those barricades out at the North Trailhead. They just move them out of the way like they're not even there. Just leave them. So I don't know what else we could do. I mean, we can get heavy-handed on it, but that's not what we really want to do either. We don't have the time and the abilities to enforce it that much, but it's just not smart on their part. We're doing it for a reason, and they need to stay away from that.
Okay. Thank you for that update. We'll now move on to agenda item F, consent items. Consideration to approve the meeting minutes from our May 2nd, 2023 council work session, council meeting, and the strategic planning budget meeting. Are there any other changes or corrections other than those that were discussed in the work session? Okay, seeing none, we would need a motion to approve those
So
minutes.
moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item number G, action items. Number 1, Coleman View Estates Development Agreement, Subdivision, and PRUD. We'll start with number 1A, consideration of resolution 2023-18 regarding a proposed development agreement between Riverdale City and GCH Riverdale 1 LLC as requested by Goldcrest Homes LLC. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. We listed the development agreement first because it's the same one we've been using in terms of the water acquisition from Weber Basin. There's additional thing in there in this case, but it's tweaked to their development. And Sean was concerned. I mean, we have to have the water based on your guys' passage of our previous ordinance that nothing goes in until that's done. So we listed this first, figuring we could discuss that and see what concerns and questions you had on that part of it. And we could just break them up. I would recommend we do them separately, but because they do have different particulars to each one of them. So.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments on that development agreement?
Yeah.
Okay, Councilor Hanson.
Okay. Starting with the resolution, which maybe will be a moot point. It lists Goldcrest Homes LLC, which isn't the legal entity name. And so I know this isn't the resolution isn't a binding contract, but it seems like we should have the legal name of the developer in there, which I think is the GCH Riverdale 1 without the comma. Okay. I think that was my main issue with the resolution itself. The agreement, I do have a few concerns. Which, do you mind? I don't mean to take too much time. Just let me know if I...
You're fine.
Okay.
No, that's why we're here tonight. So.
Okay. I think my biggest one would be, I understand the need for the water, and that portion looks really great to me. I think that's standard for what we've done on the last one that we did, on them being able to purchase it from Weber Basin if needed. There is a provision in there that says that this is based off the final site plan, agreement, drawings, all that kind of stuff, which hasn't been approved. So that would be it's kind of one of those circular things that I would have an issue with. There is a legal name issue in the agreement itself. And then I think, and this will tie down into the site plan, the plan review, but there's just some serious issues. It seems like we've been provided with a pretty rough draft of these plans and on this project. That's why I was wondering if you guys needed more time to review it, which I can get into that on item B for the most part. But when it comes to the PRUD part, I was a little curious of why the roads were left as public rather than including that as part of the HOA and the PRUD.
It's because the city code was updated some 10 years ago where all streets are now public streets and all utilities are public utilities because they were not being able to be maintained appropriately by the old PRUD system with the HOA. Okay. And so the code was changed
That's
it's our code that we created for that purpose, yeah.
That makes sense. The second part on that, this is under section 2A3 about the setbacks. And I assume the reason for the setbacks is to try to fit more parcels in there, especially because of the open space. My concern And I don't know enough to have concerns on the side and the backyards, but on the front yards, I think my concern would be that we get into a position where we have vehicles that are blocking sidewalks and maybe sticking out into the road, which I have seen on some of those smaller setbacks. And that seems like a major safety concern, that if we can avoid it up front in the process, there may be some benefit to that. Let's see. And then on item 3, section 3, in this one they talk about they agree to pipe the ditch on the plans without question, which was different than the plans. But it doesn't match, because on the plans it says it's under protest, and also on the plans it reads that would take place during phase 2. In the agreement it states that it takes place in phase 3. And so there would be some concerns with continuity there, and which reigns supreme, or if we just need to fix it. But if we still have this outlying issue of if or they aren't, because it's under protest, then there's got to be issues with the agreement based off of that, would be my concern on the legal side. Additionally, it talks about the UDOT design approvals. It doesn't talk about UDOT anywhere in anything I read that they've given approval and permission to connect yet to the road and to the utilities. Has that taken place?
It's another circular logic issue. UDOT wants a storm drain agreement. Is that right?
That's just for the stormwater.
Yeah, stormwater agreement in place is what we're being told, and from our engineer as well, in order to give a conditional access permit a cap. And so, but we won't sign that agreement until the city council has approved the project. Okay. So again, we're talking about a lot of circular paths here. There's another one that's presenting itself.
But UDOT kind of has given like a conditional go ahead.
Well, I probably should let them talk more to that, honestly, but it sounds like theoretically yes, but they need that documentation to close that loop off and be okay with issuing the permit.
Okay. In Exhibit A, it includes the Brent and Kimberly Coleman Trust parcel as part of the project area. Is that included in the project area? I didn't see that included in the plans. The one that's to the south.
Yeah, again, you'd have to talk to them. I believe that's just being carved off as far as for the Coleman family to continue to maintain and utilize. But clearly we could get more understanding from them as they
Would you like someone to come up, Councilor Hanson?
I mean, if you want to answer that
Yeah, if we
questions,
could have a representative from GCH.
just so you know what I'm looking at. And
just go ahead and state your name and that you're from GCH.
Adam Anderson, Sandy City, Gold Crest Homes. Okay. Thank you very much for your time, Mayor, council members. So maybe I can address some of these questions for you.
that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, so this one was Exhibit A. It includes the parcel for Brent and Kimberly Coleman Trust, which is to the south. Mm-hmm. In the agreement itself, in that exhibit, I didn't see it included in the plans. So is it part of the
2.5 acres? Is that what?
Yeah, that's under their trust name. Yeah.
Yes, I know we just recently changed or did some adjustments with that. Was that right? I'm talking to Rich here. I know we went through some stuff. So I can tell you one of them's 3 parcels are MOVU and 1 parcel's Brent and Kimberly Coleman.
Okay, and it is included in your project area.
Correct.
Okay.
In total, about 19 acres.
Okay.
Approximately.
So I think, and then that'll be down in the next item B, but it wasn't included in the plans that I saw anywhere in any of the legal descriptions. But also in Exhibit A, it goes into a legal description of the property. It's identifying the township of Davis County.
Okay.
It's not identifying the correct township. And then Exhibit C was missing, which you told me you have now.
Yeah, it's on page C600 of the plans.
You were reading my mind on that one.
So either I could do it or I could ask them to do it. It would not be something that's complicated, but the road cross section is available. It just was not added.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so aside from that, I would say all of those issues with the agreement itself, for me, it makes me feel like it's just in a draft stage and we need to maybe have a
Could I just add one more item too?
Sure.
There is an amendment to Exhibit D that I received yesterday. The landscape plan does have one additional page that shows the coloration and the concrete, the stamped concrete idea or I guess expectation, and Mr. Douglas has agreed to that. But that is something that would be modified for Exhibit D as part of that, were it to be approved and signed at a later date.
And so basically just for me, with those issues with the, more from the legal side on this agreement, I would have a problem until all of that gets addressed and updated before I could vote to approve it, but I can only speak for myself. So that's the feedback I have on this one.
Anybody else?
Can I speak to your setbacks?
Sure.
I brought those
Oh,
up.
yeah, that'd be great.
If you notice on the plat, we specifically laid in all the driveways, and that was for a reason, to show you where the driveways would go. I think we were working with the city. I mean, we got, 24, 30 people working on this. We got thousands of hours into this. I know staff here has worked tirelessly on this, and so much to the point that I think we probably wouldn't share a Christmas dinner together, but it's a lot of tough work. It really is. But there's been a lot of good work that go into this. I know it's not 100% perfect. I understand that. But a lot of these things have been thought about and addressed, and specifically parking was addressed and concerns. Okay. And that's why we laid in the driveways where we did, to make sure for your point. And that's a great point. You don't want to.
Do you feel confident that it would fit pretty much any
a truck
vehicle?
Yeah,
super
I always do
max,
it. I drive
long
a truck. I want my truck to fit in the driveway. I don't want it hanging out in the road. So
Yeah.
I always kind of think along those parameters.
Or over the sidewalk?
Right, exactly. People
Okay.
need to walk along the sidewalks, and that's our
Yeah.
intent to
Okay.
have that as well. So
Yeah, that was just my issue. I had lived at a townhouse where
yeah, it's
the
it's
setbacks were
annoying.
very short and it was
Right.
tricky.
Yeah, exactly. So I share your concern, and that's
Okay.
so we
No, I appreciate it.
addressed our architect and engineer to make sure that they included that in there and keep that in consideration.
Great.
Any other? Councilor Arnold had a question.
So I have two comments. Basically, I don't like trying to hash this stuff out in council meeting. We shouldn't be here with this development right now. It's not ready to come before the council. We don't do this. Like the plan should come into us and we approve or deny them. We don't hash them out.
Okay.
That's staff, and it shouldn't be here before us today in this state. And then also the water situation. It's not an if statement. It's we need water before we can move forward with this. It shouldn't be here.
Right, and then the circular motion, I can't get water until you approve it.
That's not true. But
So the development agreement establishes
I mean,
water.
you won't do it until you. I mean, you don't want to. How do I say this nicely? I mean, you don't want to step into that commitment.
I can't negotiate with Weber Basin Water.
The owner of the property can.
No, we cannot.
Are you the owner of the
can.
property?
He has to go through us on that, Alan.
Because it's
But
purchased
but we
through
can
us.
get water.
Right.
I mean, there's a way to get it done, and that's the way the ordinance reads. So us moving forward would be against the ordinance,
Okay.
in violation of the ordinance. And I mean, it's a tough ordinance, but it's a fact that we're looking at water. I mean, we can't just. I mean, reading the agreement when it was talking about you can purchase water from Weber Basin, you're just talking about buying a finite amount of water. It's not. We're not getting the water shares for future, right? I mean, they're just
No, it
buying
does.
X amount of water.
It comes to us. So it's a
In
it's a block.
perpetuity, it's like
a
ours
block
forever.
of water. So it would be assigned to the city going forward, and then all we do is pay the annual maintenance on it like we do our other water.
Okay. Yeah, I don't like hashing stuff out. It's just not what we do, and we shouldn't do it.
Right, I agree. You should be the legislative body that
Right.
takes our application into consideration.
Right. Well,
Gives us an
and,
up and
and
down.
it's the staff's responsibility to make sure this stuff is taken care of and saying, and we do a lot of conditional stuff. I mean, it's like, I mean, it's presented to us on condition of this happening and this happening. So,
Happens
you know,
all the
like,
time.
like with UDOT, right?
Right. Yeah, and so that's kind of what we were hoping we could have come to some level of agreement here. I think getting this after spending literally thousands of hours, getting to this point, this to me is a yes. This is not a no. This is yes all day. I can work with this. And so what I'm here asking this body is, can you work with this too? Because I'd like to get this project moving. And we can go back and forth for the next 10 months if that's what you want. But the project's not going to move forward until we get that. if that makes sense. And all these chicken and egg things are never going to get resolved. And so are we going to sign this now? Are we going to approve it later? I don't know. But I'm kind of left with this, how far do we move on this thing? I can fix all this real quick. I can wait 2 weeks to come back to you. I can wait 3 months. I can wait 10 months, whatever it takes. That's fine. But I don't want to keep doing all the circle stuff. And as an applicant, I shouldn't be forced to do that. By law, I should have, as you are, a legislative body, be allowed to hear our application and give us a vote up or down. I understand it's frustrating. It is. We're all frustrated. I don't think there's a single one in here that looked at this and said, man, I'm excited to see this one. No one did. And when we came up here, we're exuberant, but we know it's tough work. It is tough work. And what I'm asking is tough for you guys too. And I appreciate you doing this. But all I want to do is be heard on this. And I know you want perfect. I got that. I want perfect too.
You have that right to
Right.
be heard, for sure.
Yeah.
Just exactly what you said is absolutely right.
Mayor.
Correct.
Yeah, Councilor Hanson.
Well, and I just want to say, you know, of course, this is a tough one for the community and people outside of our community to see the motor view go. It's a big piece of our individual and collective history. But I've heard a lot of people very excited about the opportunity for new single family homes in Riverdale to be able to move back, because people love to live in Riverdale and they want to get back here. And so I am really in favor of the idea of moving forward with this single family development. And these opportunities, we just want to make sure we do it right.
Sure.
And so it's hard, because for me, when someone shows up with the plans, which, sorry about this, I expect it to be the Mylar that we're ready to sign. I don't expect to see we've got 50 out or even more outstanding issues that we need to get resolved, including agreements that are outstanding on the legal side. That's really hard for me. On the plan review side, from my former life, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there that, yeah, it's little. You can fix it really quick. But to bring it to us at this level, it's just a little hard, because I shouldn't have had to spend the time that I used to spend on plan reviews as a public works worker, as a city council member.
Right.
You know, and so that part is a little bit frustrating, but I've done it, and I've got some more things for the next one if we move forward with that. But for me, I think it's an exciting project, and people are really hoping for a great product and to be able to move back to Riverdale. And so on my part, I just want to make sure we do it right and we're ready, and we don't get so far into it that then we're left in a place where, you know, people are trying to figure out how to fix what got missed.
Sure, sure.
And, you know, we have whatever sewer and storm drain backups or whatever else is going on. So.
To that point, though, you brought up some points that I've never heard before. And so there is a value in bringing it forward to this body, because you do have another perspective on it that we don't, as the applicants and staff, doesn't have as well. So I do appreciate the feedback and having that right and bringing it forward. I think it brings a better product. It really does. Because if we're shooting for perfection, dang it, I've been working my whole life. I'm old and I'm not there yet. And so I don't know if I'm ever going to hit perfection, but darn it, I'm going to keep trying. And this is going to be a great product. We stand by this product. We stand by as a developer. We stand by as a builder. What we're building, we will stand by. We were Parade of Home winner last year. We're going to do it again this year. So we believe in this product. We just want to get a chance at swing at it. We know we can do this. That's all we're asking. So I do appreciate the feedback, though. And again, that's adds value and improvement in the project. So all the stuff you've mentioned, I'm going to make sure that gets addressed. And so thank you very much. Appreciate that.
And Councilor Hanson, to your point, as I met with Mr. Brooks, I kind of told him the same thing. I said, look, we've already fought the battle over the motor view. Like, you know, it's we're down that road. Now we just need to get those screens down so we don't have to go through another summer of why is the motor view not going. You know, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak for the council, but I don't think there's anyone here that's like, we're not doing houses there. I think we know that's where we're headed. We just want to help you get through it, but we do want to make sure we cross, you know, every T and dot those I's. And I'm grateful for Councilor Hanson, because she obviously is a huge resource for us, and you know, grateful for the staff too. But we just gotta keep working this stuff through. And Councilor Arnold,
I've got one more, and I don't know where to do it in these three parts, but I really have an issue with the outlet, where the outlet is placed on this. That road is a mess.
Along 1050? Okay.
I mean, just because it's, you know, I'm figuring, you know, it's coming out about 4 lots to the south of the, whatever street that is the street by the school. Mm-hmm. And that, reading the variance that was put in there, saying it's, there's no option for a cross street. I think if there is a way to put a cross street there, that's the best way to do it for the community. When the school's letting out and all that kind of, Chief can attest to that road gets pretty nasty. And it's not typically, the residents' fault as much as it is the school, getting to school, coming out of school, but the school is there.
Right.
And so having that outlet right there is problematic for me. I mean, being the one that, Councilor Merrill lives in that area too, but I deal with that every day. And putting one offset that far away, I think is really problematic for the community.
So you're feeling it's too close to the school? Is that your
No,
concern?
I don't. I think it needs to be on the cross street. If there's any way to put it on the cross street for that
Okay,
outlet
understood.
from the subdivision across the street.
Right. So it's like a four-way rather than a.
Right,
Gotcha. Understood.
right.
Okay.
That way we can address it some way, someday. Everything goes in there. There's a street light. I don't know, but school letting out or getting to school, that road's almost. It's just bad to get on the road. And then if you have one that's just up the street a little bit, that if you try to get out on that road and somebody's coming in that way, and then we're going to have the roundabout. I was going to ask about the roundabout today, and I forgot that someday there's supposed to be a roundabout in there, so it's going to be even worse right there because there won't be any stop signs.
Right.
So I have it's a big issue with that. And I personally, just so you know, I'm sad to see the Motorview go, but the last show I saw there was Wally, so it's kind of a bad.
Well, I love Wally. Wally's great.
You did? Oh, slit my wrist.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Is there any more comments or questions? Yeah. Okay. Okay, Councilor Stevens.
I'm glad to see in one of you put in the roundabout, because one of my major concerns was you're going to have families there, you're going to have children there, and they're going to, as a way to have a crosswalk or a way to traverse across the street, there's crosswalks built into the roundabout which I think is a safe way, that lends itself. Now, is that the final plan for the roundabout? I don't know, but at least you put it in there, and it shows that there is going to be a mechanism to safely cross the street.
Okay. So, if there's no other comments, we would need a motion of some sort on this item 1A.
Does the staff have any recommendations at this point?
I have no problem tabling this, to be honest with you, because I didn't feel that it was ready. And in light of some of the things you brought up here, I think we're probably going to run into more on the next one. And we know without the water, even the next one's not going to go. So maybe to buy a little bit of time and see if we can iron out. We are getting closer. I'll give that to them. But we've got some things still floating out there. So I'm not opposed to that. I know they don't want that, but I had this discussion with them earlier in the week, and I was afraid of that because we know where the council's position is, and you've told us this numerous times, and they just felt like they wanted to at least have their day in court, so to speak. So we said it and let it go, but I don't know that it's completely ready.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Brooks. Councilor Hanson has obviously spent some time looking at the other items. Would it be of any benefit to at least discuss those so the petitioner can know where we're at on those?
I was thinking that same thing. I'm not opposed to that either, because those are things, a couple of those are, in the final site plan are bigger, even more concerning, and that's the main reason I had Mr. Douglas here, and so maybe it should be brought out and do it in a public meeting. I'm fine with that. I think we probably should. So
I think it's against the agenda, though. It's not on the agenda to go through the plans and see any deficiencies.
We have a final subdivision site plan.
Right, on B. You, as a council, you can always move things around that's on an agenda if you chose to do that. You could move A to B or C or whatever
Well,
and
they
take
could-
it out of order.
They could, the resolution's not for everything, is it? It's just the development agreement.
Yeah,
They
they're
could table the
separate
resolution,
items.
right?
Right,
And then still go on to B.
right,
And talk about the final subdivision of site plan,
yeah.
which is probably
You could
more
do
where
it either
Councilor
way,
Arnold's
yeah.
comment about the road fits, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we can have a discussion. I don't expect that you're going to approve it at this point, just because some of the concerns. But so let's stick to number 1A. Is there any sort of a motion on agenda item 1A? Councilor Arnold.
I would move to table 1A, consideration for resolution 2023-18 as stated within the packet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Ms. Maragoni, will you please poll the council?
Yes.
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 All right, that item is now tabled. That passes unanimously. We'll move on to item number 1B, consideration of ordinance 964 regarding proposed final subdivision of site plan request for Coleman View Estates PRUD subdivision located approximately 5368 South, 1050 West, as requested by Goldcrest Homes. We're okay to do this, right, Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
All right, any questions or discussion on item B? Councilor Hanson.
I'm happy to provide as much or as little comment as anyone would like to hear, but like I said, I don't think we expect perfection, but like I said, I mean, some things get worked out. There's a reason we have as-built later on, you know. But when you come to get our signature, then, you know, I just wish that it was a little bit further along, which that is a personal preference of mine. When I reviewed these, the final site plan and the drawings, I did feel like I appreciate that it's gone through several rounds of reviews, but there's still some issues that I see with it. Of course, the biggest issues I see are those that are outstanding from the engineer and from the public works. Those are some pretty substantial concerns that are left hanging out there. And I understand you're probably still working together on that to resolve those bigger concerns that they have. And one of them was that UDOT thing, that if you're in that circular thing, hopefully we can get that moved so that you can get it taken care of. But some of the things that I identified are also in there's like the 20-foot irrigation easement that appears to be partially on the adjacent property. Some of these similar things that comes with the easements, and then especially the storm drainage issues on a couple of those roads that they identified, that, you know, a water year like this and that would be just, you know, we need to worry about the people by the river, not the people that are that far inland. So if we can catch that stuff, I know you're working on that. So aside from those, which I would say would be the biggest reason not to approve today, some legal, some not legal. Of course, you don't have the owner names on there yet. Those that were on there weren't legal entity names, which is a big thing for me. I know they use MoView, but when I looked it up under Utah, that came up as a North Carolina company, so I don't think that's the exact legal name. Just something to look at to fix, to get it closer to the signing stage. The biggest one I would say is I just don't know how we could ever sign anything that says that something's under protest. And I don't know how many times that was listed in those plans, but I just don't see any way that the legislative body could move forward with that kind of legal ambiguity. You know, will it get done? Will it not get done? Is this going to result in a lawsuit? Is this, you know, what's going to happen with this? That's a pretty big unknown for me. And that was listed, like I said, I don't know how many times on there. So, and hopefully that's something I assume you're working out behind the scenes with the staff, but that was a pretty big issue. Phase 3, sheet 1, note number 8, the irrigation agrees to fix disturbances at their own cost. I'm wondering where the agreement is on that, or if you're just obligating the irrigation company. I don't know if staff has an answer on that. It's basically saying, like, during construction, if their easement is disturbed or there's a problem, that then the irrigation company would be responsible to come back and fix it at their expense rather than the builder.
Are you talking about the ditch company's easement?
Yeah, it's, yeah. And that is on phase 3, actually. So in the agreement, that matches up. But
What our code says on that, Annie, is we aren't a party to that agreement. That's between them and the ditch company. But our code does say that we have to insist that that's done. And so we're not really even privy to what they
so we
are
don't have
discussing
an
with them.
agreement or anything that shows that they've
No, but that's
decided how
all
to
we
handle
do
it.
is we just ask for the agreement at the end of the day,
Okay.
and that's going to be between them and the ditch company.
But we do ask for it.
We do ask for it, and our code requires it.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
requires
we're-
us to have
I
it.
assume we're just not to that point yet where you have an agreement with the irrigation company. Is that right?
I do know they're in negotiations with them as well. I don't know how far along they are. Mr.
Okay.
Anderson could probably fill you in on that one a little bit better.
Yeah. And that's fine. I understand you've got to work those things out. Again, on the legal descriptions in various places throughout the plan set, the legal descriptions were incorrect. Not necessarily in the official spot of the legal descriptions, but in some of those secondary spot that those were included. Let's see, sheet C200, and it's kind of a similar one. It's that irrigation easement. It's note number 26, obligating the neighbor to have an easement, stating that it's on the other side of the boundary. It made me wonder if there even is an existing easement on the neighbor's side, that then they don't need to have an easement on theirs. It was really unclear on if the easement exists or doesn't exist, or I know it's one of those under protest, but
Yeah, I mean, there would be some sort of an easement or the ditch wouldn't be there. So
okay.
there's got to be something in place, but what that says, I don't know that.
Okay. And then again, C300, number 7, the ditch to be filled in and piped during phase 2. And that was the difference in the agreement where it said that was going to happen in phase 3. And then the difference in the plans was that that one shows under dispute, that it's being disputed or protested. And so just to make sure that we're resolved on that for both the agreement and the plans.
I know that was part of their discussions as well.
Okay.
On how that's to take place. And one of the reasons why it was slipped into phase 2 and phase 3 is where that comes in at first. The phase 1's not affected by that.
Right.
And so that was why one of the reasons we thought we could maybe sign off on phase 1, but 2 and 3 would be an issue until we had that in writing and finalized.
Right. And that makes sense. And especially if we move forward with the final plat on just phase 1 to start, if that's the plan. Let's see. And then, the follow-up note was C400. That's where it talks about that you will install it under the standards of the irrigation company. But we don't know, you haven't reached that agreement yet with the irrigation company. And then it has the under protest, which is a pretty big concern for me. So really based off of all those things, especially the stuff from the staff, it doesn't seem like this would meet our obligation as the council to move forward for the safety and welfare of the city at this point. But that's just my comments on it.
Okay. Any other comments? I did have one. It's not as organized as Councilor Hanson's, but as I was reading the notes, and I kind of lost track of all the pages because they're kind of duplicated, but it said that the 20-foot easement on the canal or the ditch was required by Riverdale City, and I don't think that's correct.
That is not correct.
I think it's one of those circled notes, so I've been trying to find it. But I don't think it's Riverdale City that's requiring that. So.
No, and I don't think the canal company, from what I understand, requires
This was
I think it
20.
is a 20-foot.
And this said 20, which I think
Right.
sounds right.
Right. But initially, when you and I met with them, they told us it was a 40, and that's
40,
where I
yeah.
expressed my concerns in there that just sounded way extreme to me. And as I understand it, since then, that they are only requesting a 20. So
But it is them, and it's not Riverdale City
that is
requesting
correct.
that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And Mayor, that reminded me.
Yeah, sure.
And then I just have one more question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we will not miss you, Councilor Hanson.
Sorry.
My name's Richard Copps. I'm at Realty Path representing the Colemans. I've been doing a little bit of research on this canal situation. On the property reports, we look back to like 1939. We can't find anything recorded that there's anything for an easement or a right to access the Motorview property to service the canal. And further research, we found there's only 21 shareholders of the Riverdale Bench Company, which Riverdale City is one of the majority owners. Plus, Weaver Basin Canal Company, the Snyder's Golf Course. So I think about 25% of the shareholders or absentee owners that inherited the shares that have nothing to do with the ditch company. As far as we could find, the only open area of the ditch, and Sean might could back this up, the only open area on the ditch is around the perimeter of the Motorview drive-in. So all the other ditch areas are all enclosed. Coming down from, I guess it's Patterson's to Riverside, to around the Motorview, that area is open, but we can't figure out why that ditch is so important to everybody. Because there's just a minimal amount of shareholders that own that ditch. And according to the research that I've done, I went to the Weber County Commissioner's office. They sent me to Weber Basin. I talked to Weber Basin. They ended up calling, who's your city engineer? Brad?
Todd.
Yeah, okay, so he told me that they were requiring a 20-foot easement would go over from the center point of the ditch to 10 feet on each side of the center point if the ditch was to be enclosed. But I can't find anywhere that anybody has access either from the Snyders or from the Motorview that there's any kind of written agreement that says that they have to have an easement. It's not on the plat, it's not recorded with the county, it's not through the county surveyor's office. And the Motorview was established, I believe, in the 40s, and this canal situation was in 1939. So we're trying to figure out how this all plays, because you've done your research on it and I've done my research on the other side, and I can't figure out who's calling all the shots here. And that's where we've been tying this project up now for 21 months? And it's just ridiculous. You know, the Colemans, I've known them for 42 years. They hired me to help push the Motorview along. I've had over 80 people that have called me, contacted me about what can we do with the Motorview. We want to put in apartments. We want to put in some type of a horse ranch or whatever. And I've talked with Mike when I originally met him, in 2017?
Year and a half ago.
Yeah, and he told me about the general master plan. So I pulled up those documents and I read, if the Motorview drive-in was a cease operation, the only thing that you would require to go in there would be residential housing. Okay, so I did my due diligence. I found the perfect builder for the Motorview. It's like, now what? As far as accessibility for the streets, we've done research on that with the other developers. That's their sister company. They've talked to UDOT. We worked with the engineers to get the perfect accessibility for coming out of that road. The one wrench that was thrown into the whole situation was the roundabout. Okay, the Colemans were nice enough to deed over that property on a quitclaim deed to give them the access to the roundabout. So with all the engineers and everybody and all the masterminds, we come up with the best possible scenario for a subdivision to fit the Motorview drive-in. And now we're getting all this pushback, like, we need to do this, we need to do this. When's it going to stop? This is what this is your job. This is what you do. I mean, kudos to you for doing the research, because you're like right on. One other point I'd like to make about the setbacks. That can be addressed in the HOA with the conditional use for the people who would be the CCRs in that HOH. So it'd be written in that agreement that nobody could have their trailer sitting out over the sidewalk, or for accessibility, or for taking up parking spots in front. But this ditch situation, I just can't. It's just been a pain in the butt with us. And the Colemans are like, they've really been patient over the whole thing. And they we've serviced this area, kept the Motorview running for 42 years, and now they can't go forward. And now we're going to get all the people calling again saying, why isn't the Motorview up and running? Why? But the deal with this ditch, I can't find it unless you guys can find it somewhere in your records about the easement. And I think it's been grandfathered in. I don't know. We can't find it. We've looked. I've looked. I've spent many hours looking.
Councilor Arnold, you had a question?
Where did the engineer find it to put it in the plan? That
I got no idea.
As the mayor was talking about, it's in the documentation that was
we
submitted.
can't find it through the title company.
No, the engineer submitted it.
I don't know. I don't know where he got it, because that's what I've been looking for.
I mean, it might be a good question to ask the engineer. I mean, they put it on the document that was submitted, so I mean, it came from somewhere, right?
Is there not a ditch master on that piece that you know of?
As far as
Someone to contact about maintenance and operation?
Yeah, did anybody talk to him?
Oh, he is. That's who you've been working with. Oh, okay.
Contact Max Patterson? Isn't he the?
Max is just I think
He's just a secretary, but
Oh.
Brent put in a request and he sent me over the copy of the people who own the shares to the ditch. But I just find it kind of odd that one of the largest shareholders is Riverdale City.
Well,
Here we are.
And I'll make a comment that's not in my purview as a council member. Can I do that? And I'm not your attorney. I'll make that clear. But I've worked for a water attorney as before, and it doesn't have to be anywhere. Because that ditch has existed since 1939, there's a guaranteed easement there. And there's our laws and statutes on the Utah statutes that you need to take a look at that obligate you on how to address this kind of an issue. But that is the tricky part.
But the one pushback
not my
I heard
legal
was
advice.
the 40-foot easement. Like, come on, there's no canal anywhere in Utah that's got a 40-foot easement.
That wasn't from us. We never got involved in that. So
I've never heard the 40 foot.
Yeah, and then when I talked to Brad, he said, you know, a 20-foot easement. If you pipe that, you take the center point and 10 feet each side. I've gone over there and measured the width because there's a fence on the Snyder side, fence on the Moorview side, and it's anywhere from about 12 to 14 feet. But somewhere along the line, through the city, the building department have given the variance for the Colemans to build the storage units along the canal with the 16-foot setback from the fence to the back of the storage units. So that's been recorded somewhere. So when somebody comes out and says, well, we got to have this easement here and here and here, it's like, where's it at? You know, where's it printed? I want to read it.
You can build in an easement. It just gives the canal company or whoever the ability, like with the storage sheds, they can go through and tear them down to fix whatever they were doing, if that's what an easement is. I mean, you can build within an easement. It doesn't keep you from building in an easement. It just guarantees the right. Like if you have an easement at the end of a subdivision and somebody builds a shed and the fire department needs to go through it, they'll go through it.
Okay,
That's what an easement is. It's not.
So around the perimeter of the motor view, there's a fence on each side of the canal. Until you get to the head gate where it goes over to the academy, then there's access right there for somebody to come in there and pull all the tree branches and stuff out off the grate. So who has that right to go in there and clean that? The ditch company? But as far as the motor view goes, there's no written agreement anywhere that we can find where somebody has access to go in there. They've just been pulling up with their equipment or whatever and doing at will.
Water's really hard, and like I said, that's the best advice I could give, is that you need to review those statutes and maybe talk to a water attorney, because it doesn't have to be a written recorded easement. It's
Those
just
are state statutes they got to look at.
statutes, yeah. That if you pull those up it's really specifically about ditches and canals, because this is common. I mean, our whole state was built on these little tiny ditches and canals, so maybe it'll give you some good direction, but it's not my legal advice. It's just some friendly advice.
But that's where we're at. We're just trying to, okay, who's calling the shots here? You know, what direction do we go? Because, you know, I mean, this project, come on, it's been going on way too long. And we're right there to the finish line. I mean, they're ready to start building. I mean, I've already had 7 people contact me that want to have homes built in there, but what do I tell them? You know, is it next year, the next year, you know, 3 months from now? Like, Come on.
So,
Yeah.
Councilor Hanson, are there people that they could contact that are experts in the water law?
Yeah,
And-
there's quite a few water law firms. I don't know if I should suggest anyone specific, but in Salt Lake, there's quite a few well-known.
yeah, maybe bring in someone that's an expert in that water law and see if they can help you rather than just
I
kind
thought
of.
maybe, when I went to the Weber County Commissioner's office, they give me some numbers to call. And every time I called somebody to contact somebody, it was all a dead end.
Yeah.
And then finally they got Brad on the phone. He says, "Oh no, I know all about the motor view. We're looking at a 20-foot easement and to pipe it in."
And that's standard, I think,
Yeah.
on a utility, 10 feet on each side. And it may have been bigger because of the open ditch, but it would shrink it because now you've got it piped. And so that would,
But I just didn't want the point to be it's 20 feet inside of the property line from on the Motorview side when Riverside Golf Course gets full access to the other side, and they I mean,
it should be from the center line of
10,
pipe.
10 feet both ways, I think, is what you're looking at.
Yeah. That's kind of what when I measured it and looked at it, but no one's come up and said, where are we measuring this at? Where does it start? Where we fill it in? What size pipe? Any of that. So,
Yeah.
but I was just, when I talked to Mike briefly about this, but I was just appalled for the city for having, I don't know how many shares you guys own into that canal company, but for no one from the city to come forth and say, we got these shares, this is what we recommend to kind of help the process go a lot easier.
Well, that normally has to come from their board, the ditch or canal board,
our attorney
rather
told us
than from
not to
just
do
one
that.
shareholder. But
I
I don't want you to get discouraged. Like I said, I know people are excited about it, and you guys have done a lot of revisions and a lot of work. And it sounds like you've got a couple of bigger issues to try to resolve, especially with these agreements. But it's not impossible, and it sounds like you're really close. And I think hopefully, if
But
you
I
can,
mean, how close,
yeah. Well, in some of those, it's kind of out of our hands if it's between you and the ditch company, but hopefully you can figure that out. And that was just my other thing I had is, on all of these, when you look at the notes section, you've got that, forced to put easements or however it's worded. And of course, we don't want that on the final version. And really, when I was looking over your plans that list, you guys were so detailed on your easements. I was really impressed with how you called them out on the actual plan itself, which was really helpful with the amount of detail that was included. And so I know you've got these outstanding concerns that you need to work out with the ditch company, but it is a little bit out of our hands, but it's doable. And I hope that you guys can
I
come
would
to an
just hate to
agreement
have
on
to
it.
see this contractor walk and then start the process all over again, because I did the same thing on Coleman Farms. I mean, I put that on the MLS, and I had all kinds of crackpots that wanted to buy that property, and I just had to, keep them, away from apartments to a monastery to a goat farm to, I just had all these crazy things. I says, no, I remember what Mike told me. He says, it will never pass through the council. This is what we want to do is put in residential housing. So we stuck to that format, and then here comes the motor view. And then we stuck to the same format, and now it's just getting dragged down the road. And it's like, okay, when does this end? Let's move forward and get this thing done and get people moving in here and, make a nice project out of it. But
My final comment would just be, I think you need to clean up on the plans, of course, of language that isn't great, and on just making sure everything's accurate. Obviously, the bigger things are going to be those couple of issues from the engineer and public works, and then just resolving this with the ditch master company. But I'm hoping if you go back and look at those statutes, they're pretty. They give some pretty good direction. Or if you reach out to a water law.
who can I contact for the ditch company that will actually come out with the right answer instead of, I've probably I've called 8 different people.
Can you do the 20-foot easement and make your plan work?
I'm pretty sure they can make it work after I've been out there, because I've been a contractor for over 40 years in real estate, 16 years. So I know how it all works. I've been out there myself with Brent and I and walked it. We've measured it and, looked at every possible scenario.
Yeah, I think if, Mr. Douglas.
So I would just like to stay on the city's behalf. We was asked not to address the canal, to let them negotiate the canal. Very forcefully asked that. So that's why we haven't been involved in that negotiation. We're just waiting for a letter.
Okay.
Your contact for the ditch, the president of the ditch, is Brad Nelson. That's who you need to go
Yeah,
through.
I talked to him, and he's the one who said, no, it's not a 40-foot easement, it's a 20-foot easement. It would go from the center of the pipe.
Well, let's do it then. Get an agreement and bring it in here. Like,
Because he's the final guy that I talked to, and that was the last person I talked to, and that was a simple conversation, like 5 minutes. But the other part was, how come there was no agreement anywhere that I can't find off the public records from?
Those little ditches, they're all over.
Okay, well,
okay, thanks for your comments. Any other comments? Any comments from staff? Come on up, Adam.
I know we're getting long. I apologize. I won't take up much time. But just for clarity, I know a couple issues came up regarding the easement and et cetera. Just for clarity, we weren't suggesting that the city required the 20-foot easement. The city never required that 20-foot easement. It was just a matter of putting it on the plat and said, well, heck, this is one of those circular things again, where we haven't quite worked this out with the canal company. Because when I talked to Brad was like, no, it's going to be this material, and I'd like a 40-foot easement, but we could probably work with a 20, I think, is what last thing we heard. We got more work to do there. And so this is where we got that circular thing where I'm trying to get a plat to move forward.
Sure.
But I'm not completely done with the Riverdale bench canal, and I don't know the solution to this with them. I've never worked with them. Right now, Mr. Nelson has said, this is it, period. That's tough negotiation. And so if you're telling me no, I need to get other people involved, and we do have a very good water attorney.
Okay.
And we also have another attorney. So we'll get this done. We have no problem with that. I promise you, councils, I'm sitting here before you, we will get this done. The question is, and where the dispute came in, was we were asked to put this on the plat when we don't have a resolution yet. And that's, how do we work that? And so can we work this way? And that's why there was so much ambiguity and question on the easement and the location and some of the wording and ambiguity, because it is kind of a fluid process without that resolution. And you're right, that's not really a city function. And so the city shouldn't be involved with that in our agreement, and I think we all agree with that. And so we would like to kind of work to some path to say, okay, we'll move forward with the plat like this. You guys fix that with the bench canal before we issue any building permits or whatever, however process we want to move forward. So anyway, just a thought on clarifying that, some of that ambiguity regarding the easement, et cetera. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything, Mr. Brooks?
There was an insinuation there. I don't know if it was directly or not, but to say that we haven't been working on this is just not true. All of us, both sides, have worked a lot on this. Sean has worked a ton on it. I've got an engineering bill that still needs to be paid for $5,000 to say that they haven't been working on it. They've been working on it. And so it's not like we've not tried to resolve this. I know this has come in 4 or 5, maybe even 6 times by now. And, I asked Sean to go back and look at his stuff, and those things were the same from the start. It's not like we've changed drastically. There was one point where he did make some changes, but that was in direct relation to some changes they made, which forced him to make changes. So I don't know that we've been negligent in any way. In fact, I don't feel we have at all. But we still aren't there. There's still some points, and some of these are major points that we can't ignore our code. That's what it boils down to. So when somebody asks us to, bury our head in the sand, not that they're doing that, but if we just don't look the other way, we've just never done it, we never will do it. And so if it's in the code, we're going to enforce it, we're going to demand that it gets done. And that canal agreement, initially I think we did take a little bit more of a hands-on approach to that, but we backed off on it. And their attorney sent me a letter and didn't feel that we were party to it. And when I looked at it, I agreed with him. So we did back off on that. But that's between them and the canal company since then. And we can't help that we own shares into that. And Sean hasn't been a party to any of those discussions with them. And whatever their parameters are, that's between them and the canal company. And it's not just the easement. There's another issue there that's pending that, as I understand it, the canal company's taken a hardline stand on. But again, that's not us. But the canal company has their interests as well, and they're going to protect them just like we protect our codes.
So let me ask you one quick question about your thoughts on them proceeding, just so we can get a little clarity on this for us and the counselor and them. I mean, is that something that could be done, is for them to proceed with the phase 1 before that agreement's in place? Was that
Before the canal company
before the
agreement took
canal
place?
company agreement is in
I think
place?
that's a possibility, because like I said,
I
it,
think that's like one of many issues, so.
Oh yeah. Oh no. I know that. I'm just asking
Yeah.
for that.
Proceeded.
yeah,
If they've
because,
got everything else
right.
perfect,
right,
and then it's just
Right.
that one thing hanging them up, and they're like, "We'll have something by phase 2."
right, right.
I'm not saying these guys have to approve it, but that would be something we could consider doing.
That was one of the thoughts we had in our discussions, that we could come in and work on a contingency on that direct.
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of that kind of stuff, but
I know.
if
And
they want to
none
start
of us
getting
are.
stuff in the
Make sure the
ground.
plan notes match the agreement notes.
Yeah, it's got to match
when it's gonna
perfectly.
happen.
Right.
Yeah, phase 2.
Right.
And it would be phase 2 that we would want it, I think.
The canal is in phase 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Then it's definitely got to be phase 2. All right. Anything else, Mr. Brooks?
No.
Okay.
I mean, if you had further questions, I mean, Sean can give you more details on it, but we have nothing to hide. We've done nothing wrong. So he's just done his job, and he's done it well, as has Todd. So it is what it is. So
Okay. So if there's no other discussion, then we would probably need some sort of motion on ordinance 964, as stated in the packet. Councilor Arnold.
I would move that we table ordinance 964 as stated within the packet.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll second it.
and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Marigold, will you please poll the council on that?
Yes.
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 Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Item C, do we want to go into this discussion, or
I mean, it is on an agenda. I would probably at least consider it, and
Yeah,
if they want to table
if they
that one
wanna
as well.
table it, okay.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion on item C, Councilor Arnold?
I have a question. If our ordinances deed the city or the streets and utilities and everything over, what does a PRUD give anyone?
So in this case, the minimum lot size for the R2 zone is 8,000 square feet. On their variation, they're asking for smaller lot sizes than that and some variation on setbacks. The smallest lot is, I think, 7,000 square feet. And then they have a lot in there that's 13 or 14,000 square feet. There's a couple. But it also asks for some variation on easements, as you saw that 20 and that, I think that, is it 5 on the side
That
yard?
last-
15, I think.
Or 50?
I thought it was 15 on the
20,
side.
20, 15, and 20, I think is what they're asking for. The standard zoning for the R2, I believe it's 30 combination, 14 or 16, and when I say combination, 2 side yards, and then rear yard is 25, I think. So basically, you're asking for maybe a little more house with a smaller lot and easement on the, or easing on the setbacks. And what you give back then is a high-end design aesthetic on the homes. That's where that 40% architectural guideline comes into play. That's the trade-off. And then they have to provide a community amenity, and they also have to establish CCNRs, and there are very strict guidelines on how those CCNRs are maintained and supervised through their HOA. And so they have to have a dues system. That's why you'll see in the PRUD, there's a documentation showing what those due rates are and those sorts of things. It's to maintain that. So the public amenity that's part of that subdivision is maintained by the HOA and not by the city, but the residents of the community at large have access to it. So that's the reason for the PRUD. They even comment at one point, I think if they were to do the standard R2, they equate that they'd get 78 lots out of it, but it wouldn't be as quality a product. And so they're going for the PRUD to have that flexibility with lot sizes and setbacks. And then they get 68 lots, and then that big community feature that's under the power lines that really isn't developable with the power lines being there. So long and short, there's the answer.
Great. I mean, because like the HOA and the Coleman Estates, like they're not doing anything. They're collecting the money. They're not taking care of the stormwater area. I'm the one that's weed eating the big long white fence. This is my 3rd year that I'm doing it. The HOA's not doing it.
And that was just an R18 subdivision. The reason for the HOA is because the management of the detention basin, that's what our code requires, is that there be some kind of management entity. The back fence was part of the management as well. So then the management entity of that subdivision is not operating correctly the way it was proposed and expected to do so. That's where the issue is on that one.
So I can send them a bill.
Or let us know, and we'll have to find out. I suppose maybe who's in charge of the HOA. I don't know what that would take, but we'd have to do that research.
I'll talk to you about that.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Hanson.
I don't have as many comments on this one. I don't mean to scare anybody. The main ones I actually had were on the resolution itself. There was the non-legal name again. And actually in this one, it looks like maybe we forgot to include the planning commission date of the public hearing. And so we would just need to make sure that gets included. The only reason, and those are really the only main things that I would have on it. And so, but with the other two not being ready, I probably wouldn't want to personally move forward with this one, but until we can do all three together.
All right. Any other discussion on this item? Okay, we would need a motion on resolution 2023-19.
Move to table the consideration of resolution 23-19 regarding the proposed planned residential unit development overlay request.
All right, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Ms. Maragoni, will you poll the council?
Yes.
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 All right, that motion passes, so that item is tabled as well. Thank you to the petitioner for being here tonight. We'll move on to item number 2, consideration of resolution 2023-20, adopting a service dog policy on city property and facilities. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. As I mentioned in a pre-planning meeting, we had an incident come up this past week or 2 weeks ago about on what was alleged to be a service animal. I don't know if we ever even found out if it was or not, but needless to say, it did raise an issue that we don't have anything in place for the city as to how we handle and treat these things. It not only functions, but in any of our buildings and facilities. So I did request. I didn't know what the court had, if they had anything where it occurred down here. I contacted the judge. He contacted the administrative office of the courts, the AOC, and they sent up a policy. When I got looking at it, there were some things in there, like under that policy, you could actually ask them for their information and their documentation and stuff like that. I researched this a long time ago, and I thought, well, maybe something's changed. But when I went back and looked at it, it hadn't, and that was not something that was allowable before. So at that point, I thought, well, we better get something that works. And so this was my attempt at that. I think it is in compliance at this point as how the law stands in Utah. The one, as I mentioned earlier, that the comfort animals that's allowable in the housing is actually a Utah requirement. That's not nationwide. We do not have to allow comfort animals anywhere if we chose not to, but in Utah, for housing purposes, we do. So that's why that portion's in there, if you saw that. Once we get out of the housing business, if that ends up happening, we would remove that from this particular statute because we wouldn't need it at that point. But in our regular buildings, this is the policy that we'll train our staff on, and even the court and even the judge at this point. So, because I don't want them using that one. It's going to get us in trouble.
I had one quick question. On the title of the resolution, it says adopting a service dog policy. Would there be any benefit in changing that to service animal policy?
We could. I mean, yeah, I don't have a problem doing that.
I think
We
it
could insert
addresses
that
it in the actual
because it does.
resolution.
We
It
do
says
have
service
a
dog or animal. I think it said that somewhere.
yeah. You don't. Well, there is an exception for a horse, the miniature horses, but otherwise it has to be a dog. You can't substitute other animals in it. And even that's limited. It's not
Counselor Stevens.
across the board.
Is there a standard definition or certificate or something that is, I mean, I go to the VA and they'll say, do you need or do you want? And I see these guys they put the blanket on them and they got these patches, and I'm just going, is there some sort of certificate or something that's standardized that recognizes, or is this just something people invent and they buy these patches online? And it's
$4.99 on Amazon, Bart.
Exactly.
That's what you need to do. So,
and so it's, like you asked the question, is this who's to decide what's the criteria? I don't know.
Where you run into problems is you can't delve it all into the disability. So you have to be really careful about it. It's in the statute itself in A1(2). The two questions that you can ask is the animal required because of a disability? You can't ask that. You can't go in any more than that. And then you can ask what training or work has that animal been trained to do. That's all you can ask. Can't ask for cards, anything further. So a lot of people think if they have the vests on and all that, that works for them. That really means nothing. Same thing for documentations, because when I was looking at this, I got online and saw a bunch of the comfort animal proponents, and they're saying, write us and we'll get a doctor to write you this letter and all that kind of stuff. That really means nothing because it holds no water at all on the comfort animals. And so that's the two questions we can ask, and that's pretty much it. And regardless of how they answer us, you're not entitled to follow up on that or to request additional information or more details. That's all you can do. I know it's crazy, but it is what it is.
Counselor Hanson.
I just had the three things, suggestions of changing. If you're down in section C, 1B is the first one. I think maybe if we added in during scheduled play, because otherwise it kind of seems unreasonable and unenforceable for people not to let their dogs play in the park on the turf when there's nobody else around. If that's what you intended, I guess.
Yeah, I wouldn't have any objection to that, Annie.
Okay, and then on C, it's the third from the bottom. It says will be removed from the city property. And I think that puts a lot of onus on us, and maybe we should switch that to may, because what if a staff member doesn't have time or forgets, or what if the cops can't show up?
Yeah, I don't think that would matter either. That's fine.
Is Kim the only one who could remove?
No, an officer can as well. Yeah.
And then the third one is D1A, where it says in a course or as a demonstration. And maybe this is just my stupid law school brain, but course kind of threw me off, that it's not more descriptive. So I don't know if that meant like a class or a...
Yeah, I think what's happened, people have brought dogs in before just in like the rec department to do demonstrations, the frisbee golf and stuff like that. That's what that's in there for, but I don't know that we'd ever run into it. I just put it in there in case Rich ever got some wild idea and he wanted to do something like that, so I left it in.
And those are the only three things I would suggest, just altering a little bit just to make sure it's a little bit more...
I'm sorry. Annie, what was the third one again? What would you want it to say?
It says any animal used in a course or as a demonstration animal is allowed. And so if that makes sense to normal people, then I think we should just leave it. For me, for some reason, the word course, because there wasn't like a descriptive word with it, threw me off. Like, I don't know. That maybe it should just be class or, I don't know.
And I wouldn't
And it
care. I mean,
probably
I don't know how
doesn't
you would
matter.
define it. What would that be? It's an activity of some sort. Who knows? But
If the 5 other people read it and they knew what a course was, then I don't think we need to worry about it.
the one interesting thing through all this research that I found is if the animal is not potty trained, basically, you can remove it and ask them to leave. I did not know that. That surprised me a little bit. So in that sense, that's kind of a good thing, because if you're on an airplane and the dog starts crapping all over, that would cause a little bit of a problem, you know.
Or any
You ask them to leave.
That's what I,
any building, to be honest. So, yeah.
anyway,
Okay.
I was just surprised that it would even be in there. But yeah, that, or if it poses a threat or a danger to other people, you can also do it then as well. The training, this is what's interesting about that. The training does not have to be done by a professional. If the person is able to do it, they can do it themselves. So that's the problem with this whole law, is it's so, the courts just have to put some definitions on this. This is scary stuff. That's why we have what we have, and you see what you see no matter where you go anymore, and it's just getting worse. But anyway, we need something in place, and this was a good start. So,
Any other questions? Counselor Merrill.
I just want to, if there's no other questions, I was just going to,
Nice.
move to approve Resolution 2023-20, adopting a service dog policy on city property and facilities.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Miss-
Have the motion, talk about the changes.
Okay. Are you okay with the changes that Councilor Hanson made?
Yes.
The motion is okay, and the second appears to be okay as well. Thanks, Councilor Arnold. All right. With that, Ms. Marigold, will you please poll the council?
Yes.
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 All right, that passes unanimously. Very good. We'll now move on to the comment section of our meeting. Any comments from the city council for this meeting? Seeing none, any comments from the city staff?
I think that's all we had.
All right, and I do not have any comments either, so we would need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
We're adjourned. Okay. Anyone need a break? Or are we ready to move into the RDA meeting?
No.
Let's go. Okay. We'd like to welcome you all to our Riverdale City RDA board meeting for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. Please let the record show that all board members are present, as well as members of the city staff. Seeing no public here tonight, we will dispense with the public comment portion and move on to agenda item C, presentations and reports. Number one, report of RDA increment payments to developer, Mr. Eggett.
Thank you. We do this annually. Like the mayor said earlier, this is our 15th increment payment of 15 to Boyer. So that will be the end of the 550 West increment payments. For that one, it's completed. The payment this year was $173,270 based on a combination of their property tax as well as the little bit of personal property tax that they remit to the county, which is below budget, $36,730. That letter is written up, and I believe that the check and the letter will be sent off this week, absent obviously any issues from this discussion. You can see that our treasurer, or I guess business administrator for the RDA, has signed off on it, and Mr. Brooks, as the executive director, has signed off on it. And then you can see that the summary sheets are attached, and then the letter that will be sent off. So there's really not a whole lot more to it, but there you go.
What is Boyer Company in this?
They own the they owned, I should say, yeah, they have interest in the J.C. Penney Center.
Okay.
They developed that, but it's since been sold off. But because they were the initial developers, they still get the increment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Just for future reference, I'm going to start in the future, put this on as an action item, even if it's just a simple motion. I just think when we're throwing that kind of money around, that should be you guys should be approving that rather. We've never done it in the past. We've just rubber stamped these like this. We just missed it on this meeting, but even just something quick and simple, mainly just so we got a record of it, because I think that's just bad practice.
Okay, because this is just a presentation, so we're a report. So
Right.
All right. If there's no other comments, we would need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
All right. We're adjourned from the RDA board meeting. Mr. Brooks, do we have some strategic planning training?
Where you at? You wiped out?
Yeah.
I was afraid of that. I really thought this meeting was going to be short, so I thought we'd have time.
We're wiped out. It's almost 8. Like, I think, I mean, it's up to
Well,
you too, but